Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at a brand new cooler on the market from our good friends over at Kolink. This is the Umbra EX180 ARGB CPU tower cooler. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at the Kolink EX180 from their Umbra range. This is part of Kolink's kind of value range, and you'll probably, if you're into your Kolink stuff, you'll have seen the Umbra range around, Umbra Fans, etc, etc. So this is their first tower cooler as far as I'm aware. So this is a 120mm tower cooler, comes with a 120mm ARGB fan, which has a relatively high static pressure, 2.12 H2O. It unfortunately has spring clip fittings on the side, which we'll see how easy or difficult those are to install. And it's actually all in a very lightweight package, which actually surprised me. The actual tower cooler itself weighs in somewhere around about 370 grams, which is actually particularly lightweight. So I'm really interested to see how well this thing can actually perform. As with most tower coolers, we're looking at 4 heat pipes on here. They are direct touch heat pipes, and they are 6mm in diameter or width, or however you want to measure it. And as the name probably gives it away, the EX180 has a rated TDP of 180 watts. So this is going to be fine for actually quite a lot of the processors on the market. Obviously some of the newer ones you might be a little bit more concerned with. We're going to be testing this today with the Ryzen 9 3900X, which under full load, generally within Cinebench, can clock up to somewhere in the region of about 140 watts as a peak package power. So I think this is going to be a good test for it to see how well it goes. We're going to go through now, do a quick unboxing, see what we get, see if there's any potential issues that we might see. Then we're going to go through, obviously do the testing, and then we'll come back at the end with my final thoughts. So taking everything out of the box, and this is exactly what we get. So we'll go through and check out the bits. So first of all, you get 2 spring clips. This is a little bit of a downside in my opinion. I would like to have seen possibly 4 of these. So if you wanted to, maybe you could set up some sort of push-pull configuration, but nope, 2 clips included. There is a small syringe of silver-based thermal compound, always nice to see. You do get a very concise instruction leaflet, which talks about all the processors that it will fit. And essentially this does pretty much all Intel sockets from the 11.5X range upwards to the latest and greatest LGA 1700. And also on the AMD side of things, looking at AM4 and also AM5 compatibility. When it comes to the actual fittings, they're pretty much a standard affair. So you get 2 bags, one of which is this one here. So this is your AMD fittings bag, and we've got our usual kind of bar retention mechanism with the spring-loaded springs in there, and a couple of screws to actually attach that to the bottom of the cooler. And on the Intel side of the fence, you've got the same sort of thing. So you've got the usual dog-legged kind of brackets on there, again spring-loaded, so nice and easy to do. Nice that they put them in separate bags so you know exactly which one is which. If you're going to be using this with a Intel setup, then you will need this backplate. This is compatible again, LGA 1700 and potentially LGA 1800 when that comes out, and will go as far back as the 11.5X range. Sadly, it doesn't go any further back than that, so if you're on older LGA 775, etc., then unfortunately you're going to be out of luck with this one. Also included is the Umbra Fan, so this is the Umbra 120mm ARGB. Nice fan, decent weight to it, nice plastics, very rigid, and you've got the translucent blades as well to let the RGB goodness flow through. You've also got rubberized edges, all 4 corners, front and back, and also you've got a slightly kind of angled design there to help with turbulence. We'll find out what that's like later when we do some noise tests. In terms of connectivity, very good, I like this a lot. You've just got a standard 3-pin 5V addressable RGB, and also you have a standard 4-pin PWM. No pass-throughs, no extra wires to deal with, just pure and simple. I like that a lot. And last of all, we've got the actual heatsink tower itself, which is actually bizarrely lightweight. I am honestly quite concerned how well this is going to perform. It has very, very low density. It's extremely nice, and it's actually very tough. All the fins on the side are actually quite nice thick fins. It's all been coated really nicely in this kind of almost like a glossy black as well, which is quite nice to see. And something which you don't often see on these types of coolers is a little bit of attention to detail at the bottom here. At the bottom of the heatsink, where you've got your cold plate, which directly touches your CPU, you've actually also got some additional fins on there as well to help dissipate some of that heat, which in actually quite a few cases does actually work out to do quite a good job in some instances. So it'll be interesting to see how well this actually performs. Whether or not that is enough to combat the actual lightweight of this, we'll yet to find out. On the top, plastic cover on there, and you've got the Kolink logo on there. Doesn't look like that comes off particularly easy, so I'm not going to try and take that out, but I think it actually finishes off the top of the cooler quite nicely. On the bottom, you've got the 4 exposed heat pipes, and there is a sticker on the bottom, just so you don't obviously leave that on while you're installing a cooler, which we've all done. I've done many a time. I did notice straight away the bottom done quite nicely, pretty smooth there, although there is some adhesive residue left over from the actual sticker, so I am going to go over this with some isopropyl alcohol just to make sure that's nice and clean. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, all looks good. No weak points, no kind of manufacturing defects or anything. The actual cold plate section here is mounted really nicely. It's not wobbly or loose or anything. So yeah, overall, despite it being extremely lightweight, it does appear to be made particularly well. So with all that said, let's get this thing put together, put it on a test rig and see how well it does. So let's quickly introduce the donor platform. So the donor platform, as you can see, is the MSI B550 Gaming Plus motherboard with the latest BIOS installed on it. And we've also got the processor pre-installed as well. That's a Ryzen 9 3900X. And we've got 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, DDR4 4000 mega transfers from vColor, sat in there ready and waiting. And yeah, now it's just a matter of getting this thing fitted. So let's get on with it. So in order to set up this for an AM4 rig, we've got these 2 brackets and 2 tiny screws. Now the screws actually may catch you out because normally for most PC assembly, you can use a posi head 2 or PH2 screwdriver for pretty much everything. This screw, very small, needs a PH1, so make sure you've got a smaller PH1 screwdriver on hand. There isn't one included in the box, so you will need to provide that for yourselves. Looking at the instructions as well, it wasn't entirely obvious straight away which way the brackets went in, but they do go with the bracket actually being on the top and with the kind of the dogleg slightly chamfered section being facing outward. And the reason you know that is because when you put it on here, the screws would be accessible from the sides, whereas if you put it in round this way, then they're going to be too low and you won't physically be able to get a screwdriver into them. So mounted on the top, and we'll stick the screw through the bottom. And there we go, it's pretty straightforward. Tighten that up. And yep, just the same on the reverse side now. So when you're finished, this is what your cooler should look like on the bottom. So these sections dog-legging outward on both sides. Next up is to prepare the board. So this is actually really straightforward and simple. The standard AM4 mounting brackets on the side there, we can just undo those. You can still use your PH1 screwdriver if you've still got that to hand, or you can use a PH2. PH2 generally fits these screws slightly better. Take off the brackets and put those to one side just in case you need them for a later install or possibly for some form of RMA. Now we're going to leave the back plate in place, that stays there because we're going to need that to actually attach to. So now we can apply some of our thermal compound, and I'm actually going to use slightly differently than normal. I normally use Arctic MX4, but I'm actually going to give their thermal paste a try and see what it's actually like. Oh, it is very runny. So very viscous indeed, but we're going to use the spreader and spread that around. Yeah, this is a very, very almost runny paste. There we go. We've got a relatively decent application there. That looks pretty good. So now we can attach the cooler. So all you need to do is basically, for want of a better word, just plonk it down. So I'm going to match up the screw holes on the far side and then just drop it down into place. And then just getting our screwdriver, literally just going to do a couple of turns just to get it started. And then I'll do that on the back side as well, and then do alternate sides. And just keep going until the screws are fully tightened. That almost felt too easy. Now while we've got it at this angle, which the camera isn't particularly straight, but that is actually quite helpful for seeing what this is like. So one of the key selling points of this is the fact that it is actually super narrow as well. So your actual memory clearance down this side is really, really good. And even if we put the fan here, put that into place, you can see even if we did have an extra slot of RAM in this bottom slot, it'll be absolutely fine. And even if you've got relatively tall RAM, should be absolutely fine still, so it's not going to encroach over that other slot, so that's really good in terms of RAM clearance. So now I'm going to get the clips ready and see how bad these are going to be. So I'm going to do it so that the cable is actually coming out the bottom. So if I do this so it's round your way, so the cable actually comes out on the side there, but you could probably do it at the bottom. So I'm going to take those cables straight at the bottom, and with these clips I'm going to put them in on the side there. And do they hold in very nicely? Yeah, they're okay, I suppose. The tendency with these, oh yeah, you can see the tendency with these clips is for them to kind of pop out kind of straight away. But yeah, seems okay, so you're going to want them in this kind of orientation. So now let's put it onto the cooler. So there we go, I'm going to give you the weirdest possible angle for you to watch and also for me to install. So I'm going to drop this down around the side here and line up the top of the fan with the top of this deck here. So just try and get it nice and lined up, get it as even as possible. And all we do is just push these clips back and that's it. They clip in pretty nicely. So actually I'll show you that again because that was quite easy if I can get them off. So yeah, they haven't got a huge amount of pressure, which is actually quite nice. So even if you don't really have fingernails, you can still stretch them over. So all you do is push that and it just clips in the side there. Really nice and easy to do. These are some of the nicest clips I've used. They're very low tension, but still hold it all in place, which is excellent. So there is the finished look. All we need to do now is to connect up our PWM and addressable RGB headers. So the PWM one is very simple and straightforward to do because that is literally just here on the motherboard, so we can go ahead and plug that into the CPU fan. With the addressable RGB, obviously depending what case or what setup you've got, you might want to plug this into a hub or plug it into your motherboard. The choice is yours. We've actually got a rainbow header there, so I'm just going to stick it on there. And that, as they say, is that. So now the best thing for me to do is to actually get this thing fired up and see how well it performs. Hopefully it does pretty well. Okay, so the testing is done, and I'm not sure if you've heard it already, but if not, let's give you a quick listen to what the fan profiles are like. You can actually hear it now. This is just idling. Cinebench is running, but it's not active, and there's other Windows tasks running too. This is at its kind of almost default level, and in fact, the noisiest thing in here is the graphics card by a country mile. If I actually stop that, it's whisper quiet. It really is whisper quiet. So let's give you some examples of what it's like under load and when it ramps down, that sort of stuff. This is a noise test of the fan, and this is with a microphone approximately about 6 inches away. And this is just idling, and the power supply is just there, and the graphics card is just here. I think that's the loudest bit. Yeah, that is definitely whisper quiet. This is the Umbra EX180 at full load. This is currently running at about 70 degrees under CPU Z. The microphone is about 6 inches away from the fan. This is at 100% load. So as you can see, obviously at full blast, yes, it's noisy. Although, having said that, it isn't quite as noisy as the one which I've been testing against, which is this old beast, which actually comes with the 3900X as standard. So this is the Wraith Prism. Now this is actually a really good cooler. The only thing about it which people don't like is the fact that it is sounding like a hovercraft when it's actually in use. So this spins up to somewhere nearly 4,000 RPM. This is getting up to around about 1,800 RPM. So the noise difference is fantastic, it really is. So if you have got one of these and you want actually something a little bit cooler and a little bit quieter, this is definitely worth looking at. In terms of performance-wise, I've done some tests. So this is using CPU-Z, just their standard CPU stress test. Run that for about 5 minutes until the processor gets to an equilibrium. Normally, I just wait till the processor peaks to the highest temperature. If then it drops down one or stays the same, that is what I call it. That is kind of its highest temperature. And the lowest temperature is basically just me leaving the system idle. Nothing really changing. The room temperature may change slightly. At the moment in here, it's somewhere in the region about 23.5 degrees. So do take that as being the base temperature. So anything that I'm reporting, take that off and that'll give you your kind of your delta temperatures, that sort of stuff. So with CPU-Z running with the stock cooler, we had a score of 7931 and it was drawing somewhere in the region of about 120 watts of power. And the lowest recorded temperature, 36.5 degrees Celsius, highest was 75.5, and it sounded like an absolute hurricane. In Cinebench, we had a Cinebench score of 18359. It was drawing on the package 142 watts, and we had a peak temperature there of 76.4 degrees Celsius. When it comes to the Umbra, the EX180, things were looking a little better. So CPU-Z actually got a better score by nearly 250, 300 points more. So that was 8274, and that was running about 124 watts, so about 4 watts difference. So it was letting it boost a little bit higher. And that came out with a temperature of 70.5 degrees Celsius. So about 5 degrees cooler than the Wraith Prism, which itself actually isn't a bad cooler. It does a pretty decent job. And actually the temperature results are somewhere in what I would expect to see. I've tested loads of coolers actually with this particular processor, and generally it always seems to get around about the kind of 70 to 75 degree range. So coming out at 72.8 with a full load Cinebench, I actually worked out pretty much in the middle of the pack. When it comes to Cinebench with the stock cooler, we have a score of 18,354. With the Umbra, we had 18,453. So almost within margin of error, but I would say it's definitely going to give it a win. In terms of temperatures, it did better. So 76.4 degrees Celsius with the stock cooler. And with this one, we got 72.8. So definitely a noticeable drop in temperatures there. But what was most significant is the reduction in noise. So overall, I'm actually really surprised considering how lightweight that actual tower is at 360 odd grams. That is actually really light. This thing itself is the best part of about 800, maybe 850 grams as a unit. So there is a significant difference. It's extremely light and actually weirdly easy to install. So yeah, I'm very impressed. The one thing I'm not as impressed with is the price. Now at the moment, this has just come out and the price at overclockers.co.uk here in the UK, looking at about £32, which kind of puts it in some odd territory. So this puts it in kind of direct line with some of the things like the Freezer 34, which also does pretty good as well. Although arguably I would say this is actually easier to install, and the fact that you've got addressable RGB in there as well, and an amazing amount of RAM clearance, yeah, it does kind of point in the direction of this one being a winner. I would love to see this come down in price and compete with some of those other kind of slightly more off-brand coolers that you see on Amazon from time to time, which come out for sort of £20, £25. If this was on sale as a retail product, £26.99, yeah, I think people would be crazy not to snap it up. It's an amazing upgrade over your stock cooler, and actually does compete pretty well with some of the 240mm AIOs I've seen on the market, especially when paired with this particular processor. So overall, for Kolink's first entry into the CPU cooling market, as far as I can tell, I think they've done a fantastic job and smashed it out of the park. They really have. I would just like to see the pricing come down just a little bit, just to make it a little bit more palatable to the wallet. Anyway, what I think about it isn't important, what you think about it is, so let us know in that comment section what you think, and let me know, have you pulled the trigger on a Kolink EX180 yourself yet? Let me know your thoughts as well, I'd really like to hear them. But I think that's going to wrap it up. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.